we cannot look at this as an isolated incident. The reason why buildings are burning are not just for our brother George Floyd. They're burning down because people here in Minnesota are saying to people in New York, to people in California, to people in Memphis, to people all across this nation, enough is enough.
We've seen and heard a lot of harrowing and powerful images from protesters across the U.S. following the death of George Floyd, including Tamika Mallory, the activist, co-chair of the Women's March, and also the co-founder of Until Freedom. Her passionate speech during a news conference in Minneapolis has gone viral, and she actually joins us right now. Tamika, thank you so much for taking the time. We do appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. You know, your speech obviously has resonated, and your words have resonated with a lot of people. I mean, your words, Black America is in a state of emergency, was a rallying cry for what's going on and for the protests. And whether you set out to do it or not, a lot of people are saying this is a speech of a generation. What does that make you feel? Do you feel like do you feel that responsibility?
Well, I mean, I think we should all have the responsibility to speak truth to power whenever we can. And I certainly didn't set out to have a viral speech. I was just as angry as everyone else. I'm the mother of a young Black man who's 21 years old. And I feel it in my bones. It's not just work. It's also our lived experience as a Black woman in America. And so I was just speaking from the heart. And somehow or another, it turned into this thing that people have really grasped. And I think the issue is that folks are really looking for people to capture the feeling of frustration and pain. And so obviously, I was used as a vessel to be able to say something that could articulate the level of rage that folks are feeling.
That's exactly right. And I feel it's also because there's just such a lack of leadership right now. You know, we've seen and heard a lot of people call for a Martin Luther King Jr. Figure to be leading this fight right now. And for the most part, these protests have been decentralized. Why do you think that is?
So I think we're in a leaderful movement, and that's a different way of looking at it. There are many leaders. You're a leader, I'm a leader, everyone is a leader. I think what folks are used to, which is the single male figure at the sort of helm of the civil rights movement, and then everyone following the rallying cry is no more, and it's not coming back. I think what we are experiencing is, one, people stepping into their own power. Two, having movements that are not so controlled by one actor or one, and I don't want to use actor in the sense of, that the person is not real, but by one individual. I think instead we're going to have folks that come from the LGBTQIA community. We're going to have Black women, more present in movement spaces. Obviously, Black trans folks need to be more present. And then people of all different races and creeds. I think at this point, the cover has been pulled off of the pain of Black America. And people, this is not just a Black issue anymore. It's not just a Black march. This is something that white folks and brown folks and everyone has joined in, because enough is enough. And I think we always knew that until the rest of the world began to see the humanity of Black people in this country, we would never be able to solve this problem. So we're in a critical point right now.
Absolutely. And we've seen people show up with these protests. There has been a huge public outrage and outcry, and rightfully so. And I do want to note that there have been plenty of peaceful protests across the country, but of course, some of these protests that have erupted in the nation, have turned into buildings being burnt down, looting, and riots, something that you addressed in your speech as well. And just today, of course, President Obama condoned that violence in a personal essay. In fact, I kind of want to read a quote right now where he said that if we want our criminal justice system and American society at large to operate on a higher ethical code, then we have to model that code ourselves. What did you make of that, and do you agree?
I mean, I think that overall, we all agree that, we should not be in a situation where people are vandalizing property in the name of protest and in the name of a victim and the victim's family. But I think we've surpassed a point that I'm not sure folks have truly grasped. Just watched a few weeks ago the death of Ahmaud Arbery, the murder of Ahmaud Arbery on the streets in Georgia, right? I've been told that the shotgun blew off his hand, that, you know, he had a hole in his face. Like, this is how gruesome the situation was with him. Then we turn around and in the next few weeks, we learn about Breonna Taylor, a young woman in her home who was shot 8 times by police on a no-knock warrant that the actual person they were looking for was already in custody for 4 hours. So now you have that happen. Then you turn around, and in Indianapolis, there was 3 police murders in 24 hours, in which one of them was a pregnant woman and a cop ran over her. Then you come to this situation where people watch George Floyd, the life literally leave his body, where he calls for his mother and for his family members. There is a level of trauma that has now begun to develop in people that's caused this pain for some people it can't be contained, and that's something we have to work on. But I don't think that you can leave out and not take into account the fact that there are people who are detractors among these movements, these marches. There are people who are there that don't have the same goals. They're there to be to distract. They're there to be instigators and antagonizers. And so they do things that creates confusion. And now the narrative shifts from the real reason why we are there, the righteous cause that we have, to something that is, it really takes us onto a different tone. And that's not what we want to see happen.
Right. Among those causes that are being voiced right now, there's many protesters calling to defund the police. I was wondering if you can kind of explain what that means and why it matters.
So there are many movements or many industries that either spend a lot of money investing in police, in policing and police unions. And so some of those industries and some of those entities have started to pull out. I know we looked at, I think it was the public schools in Minneapolis. They have made a statement about defunding or divesting from their investments in policing. And that can happen across the country. There are many public agencies, and even on college campuses, and just in schools in general, we have a relationship with police and finance that may need to be impacted or should be impacted in order to have another level of protest. Because just being on the street is one thing, but using your dollars and having institutions, that's the word I was looking for, institutions to say that if people are not safe with police, then we should not financially invest in policing until these things are corrected. That's a different level. That's a stronger level of protest. And so that is what the clarion call has become across the nation. And we join that call at Until Freedom, my organization, to get institutions to look at how they divest from policing.
You know, cultural and political moments like this often bring people who are new to activism out to protest. What things should they be, taking into consideration when they leave their homes for their safety, would you say?
So again, they need to be aware that not everyone marching with you is really with you in this cause. There are people who have their own agendas, including what we saw that in Minneapolis, white supremacists were mixing in with the crowd and creating confusion and causing violence to occur. And so if you are a new person who's never really been in this movement, you've never, you just feel you're upset and you want to go out there and do something, you need to know that there are things to look for. And it's always good to connect with other organizations and individuals who've been doing this work for a while so that you can be properly led, properly engaged, and for your safety. I mentioned yesterday on a live that you actually need someone to know that you've been protesting so that if you get swept up and arrested, that you can people can bail you out, people can call your family members. But some folks don't know that, and they just want to go out there and they're eager, but they need to know that as with everything, even with the chaos and the disorder, there has to be order. there needs to be organization.
You know, and as you put it, it's going to take a collective response and collective action. You know, it's going to take people of different races, gender identities, ethnicities. And I'm curious if I don't know if it's easy to formalize or not, but what ways can non-Black allies do something right now to help?
So, you know, for funding grassroots organizations, that's a big piece. We can't fight people and go ask them for money, right? So that we can actually make change. And so if you're an individual or, you know, you work with an entity that wants to help, funding is very important for grassroots organizations. Listen, during the protests in Minneapolis, people needed milk so that they could help to wash out the eyes of someone who may have been tear gassed. It's just that simple. The bail funds are very important. My organization, Until Freedom, out of all the donations that we receive, we began to invest in bail funds to make sure that people could get out. Not everyone that's protesting has the resources to bail themselves out. If you're an attorney, get connected with other organizations that do legal observing. So they show up at these protests, and if they see something happening, they step in. There are many ways to be an ally, but the one thing you don't want to do, understanding that this is an issue that specifically impacts Black people, is center yourself in the protest, and you're louder and more upset than Black people. You want to be there to support. You want to be there to lend a hand in any way that you can and your resources, but you don't want to try to take over. And we've seen that a lot. And it can actually create issues like the ones that you've seen, you know, that are happening across the country right now.
Yeah. And I know that you've outlined a lot of resources and ways people can help on your own social. So on that note, I want to thank you so much for your time. I know it's been such a heavy week and there's still so much work to do, but Tamika Mallory, co-founder of Until Freedom, make sure you guys follow her on socials. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Appreciate you.
Bye-bye.
The only reason we're here is to make sure that you got a voice. That's it. There we go. Don't think for a second. We want to be with y'all for real. So I took my helmet off and laid the batons down. I want to make this a parade, not a protest. You got little ones here, you got dogs, so what's up? So listen, I'm just telling you, these cops love you. That cop over there hugs people, so you tell us what you need to do.
Walk with us! 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 Walk with us!
Let's walk! Let's walk!
That was Genesee, Michigan County Sheriff Chris Swanson, who went viral over the weekend after he removed his helmet and his baton and actually joined protesters in their march there in Michigan. And ET's Kevin Frazier was with him today.
So you put down your stuff and you're walking with everyone, and what is the reaction among people around you?
Well, I can tell you that it was electric. You had people that had no faith. And in one moment, they saw that the police were with them, and it took. And again, I'm not a hero. I'm not somebody that wants to get any attention individually. But you know, it takes police leadership. It takes experience and training. But more importantly, it takes the heart of a human being to show love and dignity and respect for another human being. And all the folks wanted was someone to hear them, not to just whisper words. And it takes cops to come from behind their desks, from outside their conference rooms, from outside their podiums, from the top down, and to go into the community. And I can tell you this too. Those folks there were street smart. And when you are in a community and you try to say something and it doesn't come from here, folks pick it up quick. Mm-hmm. And they knew that the heart was right, because I grew up in jail. I grew up as a police officer. 27 years tomorrow is my anniversary. So I understand people. I've been on the mission field. I understand pain. And all I wanted is these folks to just know that I'm here for you. These cops are here for you. And 800,000 cops around the United States are here for you. And that's what they took in. I'm telling you, we talked all the way 1.5 miles. We hung out back at the Target store. And the last 2 days, we had demonstrations, 0 arrests, 0 fires, and 0 injuries.
Though it was a weekend of unrest, there were still plenty of uplifting and hopeful moments and peaceful protests across the country. And we want to leave you with some of those images today. Thanks for joining us, guys.
My grandfather, first black police officer, okay? Hurt people, hurt people. Right? I don't want them to be hurt. Don't hurt them no more. I love you, man. I love you, man. I do. I know, but you're doing great today. I got good shit. Al Crespo don't even get your ass a little bit today. I love you. My children, 13 and 16 dead. I ran right there.